Hello guys, welcome to the second video of the SASS Bite-Sized Tutorial, and in this video we're going to be looking at how we can install SASS in VScode and also looking at variables in SASS. Alright guys, so the first thing we need to do is install SASS in VScode, so let's go into VScode now and let's do that. So we're in VScode, and as you can see I've got a folder here called SASS Tutorial, and inside this folder I've got index.html with a simple document in which I've changed the title here to Learn SASS, and then inside the body I have a really simple layout. It's just a header, a semantic tag with a h1 inside it, and then underneath that we've got three divs, each with a class of p1, p2, p3, standing for paragraph 1, 2 and 3. Now in regards to installing SASS, there are several ways you can do this. You might have seen this through paid applications or through the command line, but with VS Code you can use a live SASS compiler extension, which personally I feel is the easiest way to use SASS. So the first thing we need to do is go in the extension store, and as you can see I've already typed it in, live SASS compiler, hit enter, and it should be the first one. Now I've already installed this, but what you'd go and do is just click install, and it might ask you to restart. And once you've done that, it should take you back into your folder, and inside your index.html, if you look down at the status bar here, you'll see a watch SASS, and what this is going to do is just take all the code we put into our SASS file and compile it into CSS, because as mentioned the browser can't actually read SASS, so it needs to be compiled into CSS, and this is what this little tab does for us. It just basically transforms the unreadable SASS code into readable CSS code. So the next thing we need to do is create a folder, so I'm just going to open this up, go in my file explorer and create a folder called style, and inside this folder I'm going to create a file called style.scss, not CSS, and this is where we're going to write all our SASS. So I'm just going to put a background color to our header here and just say background color green. Now nothing will happen at the moment because, as mentioned, the browser will not be able to read this, so we need a CSS style sheet, and to create that all we need to do is just hit this watch SASS. And as you can see, it creates a CSS file for us, and that is the readable code for the browser. Now the last thing we need to do is just link everything together. So we go inside the index.html, go inside our head tag, and what we do is we need to link to the CSS style sheet. So it's style, or the file called style, and then style.css, and then if you look in the browser you can now see that our header has a green background. And if we just go in reverse here, you can see we've got index.html, which is linked to this style sheet, which is now also linked to the style.css, and now we're ready to write our SASS. Now you may be wondering why I created a SCSS file instead of a SASS file, and that's because there's more than two ways to write SASS. So as you can see in this example, we've got SASS and SCSS. Now if you look in the first box, you can see we've got two variables which are acting as colors, and we're coloring a list item, and we're also coloring the hover effect. And what you may notice is that SASS doesn't require curly braces or semicolons, and the reasoning behind this was writing quicker as there's less keystrokes, but to be honest I really don't like this style as I feel it can get very disorganized very quickly and encourages bad coding practice. Using SCSS is a much more conventional way, and as you can see in the second box it uses brackets as semicolons and looks much more organized, and that's the key difference between the two styles. And as mentioned, we will be using SCSS throughout the tutorial. So now we're all set up and know which SASS we're going to be using, we can now move on to the features of SASS, and the first feature we're going to be looking at is variables. Now if you're familiar with JavaScript variables, then SASS variables pretty much work in the same way, but I'm going to assume that you're not familiar with JavaScript. So the way to think about how variables work is to think of them as a way to store information that you want to reuse throughout your style sheet. Now you can store things like colors, font stacks, or pretty much any CSS value you can think of that you want to reuse. So to create a variable in SASS, we need to first put in the $, followed by the name of that variable. So say for example you have a global font, we can quite literally write out global font, so we can just put in here global font, and we want the global font to be Helvetica, and we now have this variable of global font which has the value of Helvetica, and we can reuse this anywhere. We can do the exact same thing for something like a primary color, so I'm just going to go underneath this, so we use the £sign again and say primary color, and let's say it's just red, close that off, and let's say for example we want some of our text to be a darker color than other ones, so we can have light text and just say light grey, and then we can have dark text, so $, dark text, and say dark grey. And what we can do now is use these variables throughout our projects. So let's just apply some of these variables to the body. So we'll go underneath here, grab the body, and say background color. We'll give it a primary color, so it should turn to red. And let's just say we want the color of the text for the body to be dark grey. So we just put color, dark text. And then if you look in the browser, you can see now that the body has a background color of primary color, which is red, and the color of our text is the variable dark text, which is dark grey. So when SASS is processed, it takes the variables that we've defined here, so the global font and the primary color, and it outputs them to normal CSS. So if we go into our normal CSS right now, you can see the body has a background color of red and the color of dark grey. And this is how the variables of the output would look like in our CSS. Now this may look simple enough, but to really demonstrate its power and its convenience, what I'm going to do is just create a couple of buttons in each of the paragraphs and give them a background color of blue. First I'm just going to get rid of the styling, and then I'm going to go inside the index and say button and just put enter. And I'm just going to copy this in each of the paragraphs. Now they're all close together, but your website will look a little different to this. The buttons would likely be more spread out, but let's just first style the buttons. So we first grab the class. Our first one is P1, and then we grab the button and say background color of blue. And I'm just going to duplicate this for the second and third paragraph. And you can see now all our buttons are a lovely color of blue, which looks great. But let's just say down the line we change our mind, and we quite often do, and let's say we want the color to be purple. If this was a bigger website, which of course it would be, the buttons would be a lot more scattered out, and we'd have to funnel through our style sheet to get to these buttons and change the color. However, with SASS we can actually create a variable for the background color of these buttons. Doing that, the background color is located in that one variable. So let's just create that now. So I'm just going to call this variable btn for button background, and let's keep it blue first. And then I'm just going to copy this variable into each of the buttons. And again, it's all background color of blue, but let's just say you wanted to change the color of these down the line, so let's change it to purple. Each individual button, all we can do is just change the value of the variable we have up here. So let's say purple, and you can see now all the buttons change, and you can really see the convenience now of using variables. The value is located in that one variable, and the variable is scattered across your project in areas you want it. And if you want to change it down the line, all you have to do is just change the value of the SASS variable. And that's how we can use variables in our projects, guys. You first write the $, followed by the name, followed by the value, and then you can use that variable anywhere you like and change it whenever you like, as it's located in one area. But that'll be it for this video, guys. If you did like the content, please hit the like button and please consider subscribing, and I'll see you in the next video when we're going to be looking at nesting.